This is Thomas Freed on the Liberty Works Radio Network. This is the Truth Attack Hour, and yes, that's right. We're back with the Truth Attack. Okay, we are the Liberty Works Radio Network, and we do need the support of the members of the listening audience to keep the network operating and the broadcast coming. So, if you enjoy the show, the information, the topic, the lectures, and the guests on the other shows, we sure would appreciate it if you'd find your way over to the LibertyWorksRadioNetwork.com website if you're not there now, listening online, and get yourself signed up as a monthly subscribing member, even if it's as little as $10, $20 a month. We need the support of the members of the listening audience to keep the network operating. So give us a hand and spread the word. Tell your family, neighbors, friends, relatives, and work associates to listen in and start getting educated on the truth about the collapsing federal system we've been saddled with, which literally comes right out of the Communist Manifesto, not the Constitution. And if you're a listener of the show, you know I'm talking about the second plank, a heavy, progressive, or graduated income tax, and the fifth plank, monopoly on currency and credit held by a centralized quasi-government private bank, like the Federal Reserve, that issues the currency as debt, and the income tax removes the excess printed fiat currency from circulation so that there's never too much currency in the hands of the population to drive up the prices of a diminishing supply of goods. So, we got a problem. If you want to get informed about this, you need to find your way over to tax-freedom.com and start reading. And you might consider finding your way over to irszoom.com and picking up a copy of The Simple Truth About Income Tax. I've just finished creating version 2 of that and added another section on the employment tax fraud that's being perpetrated on the American people. That's just $6 over at this irszoom.com, where, of course, you can go to get assistance and help by purchasing a legal letter template to answer any piece of correspondence you've received from the IRS for $50 or less. No retainer needed. We help you answer with law the IRS correspondence that you received, and we can help you regardless of what stage of the collection process you are at. And they've been asleep for about 2.5 years because of COVID, and they're now waking up with a vengeance and sending the letters out. So if you know anyone that's got a letter and needs help, send them over to irszoom.com. Get educated at taxfreedom.com. and get signed up as a supporting member at the LibertyWorksRadioNetwork.com website. Okay, what do we got happening in the news? Well, Trump speaks while Kamala sneaks off, sneaks away from the reporters, from the questions, from the interviews, from the microphones. She's just like Joe. She's afraid to speak. She's afraid of reporters. They're all cowards in the Democrat Party, and they have been, or they're intentionally hiding from America because they can't answer the questions about their policies, because their policies have been absolutely destructive for America and destructive of the middle class. She's not going to help the middle class. She's going to eliminate it and finish the job that Joe has started of eliminating the middle class by increasing prices, creating pressures and increases in costs of living that push the middle class into the lower class, and of course elevate the ultra wealthy with access to the capital that was put out into the elite ruling class, so that you're left with two classes, rulers and the poor. So the Democrats are destroying the middle class. That's what high energy costs do. It's being done intentionally so that more people will become dependent upon the government, which will increase the power of the politicians. And everything this woman says is a lie. First of all, she wasn't nominated, was she? No, she was selected. She was coronated. They ran a silent coup and kicked Joe out the back door. Everybody knew it was coming. He should never have been running in the primaries for the Democrat Party. They should have had open primaries and let people vote, and Joe should have stepped aside. But by running, nobody else was allowed to run. And then they kicked Joe out the back door in a silent coup threatening the 25th Amendment and coronate Kamala without her getting a single vote, without her ever winning a single electoral college vote in the primary back in 2019 before this election. She was the first one to drop out. She's one of the least liked Democrat candidates in the election. She's one of the least liked Democrat Party leaders since she took office and hasn't done anything at all in the vice presidential office. And now she's going to fix everything if you only put her in office. Isn't that funny? The person in office says that she'll fix everything if only you'll put her in office. Oh my God. She is such a pandering liar. Just like Joe. Oh, I'm Puerto Rican. Oh, I'm Cuban. Oh, I'm Mexican. Oh. And Hillary carries hot sauce in her purse. Right. Check. Check. And Kamala, she's not Indian anymore or Asian. Now she's black. She's been denying it her whole political career. She was Indian. Now she's black all of a sudden. What a conversion. No, what a liar. Everything she says, she's lying about. She's lying about the border. She was the czar and opened it up and destroyed it. She's lying about the crime wave. Illegal aliens do commit crimes. It's called the cartels. They're some of the largest crime committers in the country. They're most of the crime in the inner cities. Oh, but no, illegal immigrants, they don't create crime. They commit less crimes than citizens on average, unless you focus in on the cartels. They do nothing but wage war through crime on the American people. And they're killing Americans at the rate of 100,000 a year, which is China waging war on America through the Mexican border through the use of poisonous fentanyl. Since when do drug dealers have an interest in killing their consuming audience? Since when? Since when do you want to kill off your clientele? The only way you can afford to do that is if somebody's paying you extra to do it. And that's what China is doing with the Mexican cartels. And the Democrats do nothing about it. They're just letting it go. They're lying about inflation. It wasn't caused by Putin. It was caused by the Democrats. Joe and Kamala gave you the inflation intentionally by shutting down the pipeline and shutting down petroleum in the U.S. That raised energy costs, which cascaded into cost increases for every product on every shelf in every store in every city in every state in the country. And then they spent $2 trillion and dumped more money into the marketplace that already was overloaded with money from COVID spending. So yeah, government spending and energy policies have given you this inflation, these high costs, this lowered quality of life, and all you're going to get is more of it under Kamala and the Democrats. She owns every single one of these policies. She's part of it. She's the far left radical progressive. Joe used to be moderate in the middle, but he went senile and his administration got co-opted by the far left radical extreme progressives, which is now what the Democrat ticket consists of between Kamala and Tim Walz, two of the most radical, progressive, far left extreme progressives in politics. They're moving you to the destruction of socialism that comes through high costs and diminished abilities to pay bills and sustain a quality of life that you've been used to. That's what inflation does. It steals the quality of life away from you. And the corrupt media is covering for Kamala, just like they covered for Joe. You think they would have learned their lesson after 3 years of covering up the dementia and Parkinson's of Joe Biden. Now they're covering up for Kamala's absence and unwillingness to speak. What are we at? 28, 29 days, 30 days, a whole month of being the Democrat candidate, and she has yet to take a single question at an open mic or talk to a single reporter. They refuse to speak to the American people because they can't defend the policies they've put in place and the consequences to the American people that are occurring. They can't defend it. So we'll just not speak to them. Joe got away with hiding in the basement for the whole year, 3.5 years. Actually, hid in the basement for a year and a half, and then he hid his head in the sand at the beach. For the last 4 years, the man's been at the beach more than he's been at the White House. And if he's not qualified to run for office, who in their right mind thinks he's still qualified to be in office? He's not. He hasn't been running the country for a long time. As I said, he used to be a moderate. His whole administration has been co-opted by the extreme far-left progressive wing of the party. It's no longer the Democrat Party. It's the Socialist Party of America. It's being run by Bernie Sanders. The policies are being set behind the scenes by Bernie. It's become the Socialist Party of America. They've swung to the far extreme left and have aligned with the youth, the radical, extreme, violent youth. How do you know? Well, what's their policy on the Middle East, Iran, Israel, and Hamas? Oh, that's right. They're supporting the terrorists. They're supporting Hamas, not our ally Israel. That comes out of the youth, the indoctrination of the youth for the last 20 years, and the socialist educational propaganda they've been given in the schools in place of a real education. And Kamala, the pandering giggler. Everything is funny. Nothing is serious. She can't put together 2 sentences on an open topic. She can read the teleprompter, and if you've noticed, she's been giving the exact same speech in every city. The exact same speech. And none of it is policy. It's all just vague promises of her reversing every single policy position she's ever had in America. Reversing everything. No, she's not. She's lying. She's lying about reversing policy. She's not for cheap gasoline. She's for green energy. She's not for closing the border. She's for open borders. She's not for processing the illegal aliens out of the country. She's for processing them in. And as I said, they've actually taken the side of the terrorists, the Islamic terrorists in the Middle East, in the Israel-Hamas-Palestine conflict that Israel didn't start, but by God, they have the right to finish it, since Hamas did start it. And did you catch what happened out in Arizona at the Democratic fundraising event? That's right. At the door, they demanded identification. Demanded party identification. They don't want any voting ID to vote. No ID to vote needed. But to get into a Democrat Party event, you have to show identification so that they can make sure there are no hecklers or conservative reporters who might ask an embarrassing question. Like, why don't you stop telling us you're going to help the middle class and explain why you destroyed it? Why don't you explain to us why you say now you're for not taxing tips, but 2 years ago, you're the one that cast the vote in a 50-50 Senate to tax tips of hospitality workers. You cast the tie-breaking vote to tax them. Oh, and now you don't want to do it. And you just did it 2 years ago, you lying, pandering piece of... I didn't say it, but you heard it. So, Kamala won't speak to America. The Democrats won't speak to America. They're just all happy and excited and jubilant over what? Not having to pick Joe? They don't know. Okay, we'll be back in 5. This is Thomas Freed on the Liberty Works Radio Network. Okay, this is Thomas Fried on the Liberty Works Radio Network. This is the Truth Attack Hour, and let's just get right back into it. Freedom comes from God, not government. God is truth, and the truth shall set you free. God's true plan for mankind is freedom. Freedom accomplished through faith in God. If you misplace your faith in any other entity, whether it be man, institution, or philosophy, your faith will be used against you to betray you and enslave you to that false entity. Freedom only comes from God, and only God delivers freedom through faith in the Spirit, not the flesh or the physical world. So the Democrats' new policy apparently is to label Vance, Trump's vice presidential nomination selection, as weird. Oh, really? He's weird because he comes from Ohio, middle America, and was poor when he was young? Worked hard and managed to get through law school at Yale? Oh, yeah, that's definitely weird. You know what I think is weird? I think cross-dressing is weird. I think believing that men can be women and women can become men is weird. I think the whole transgender thing is weird. But I don't get in their face because I'm willing to tolerate the way you live and what you believe as long as you don't get in my face too. But that's not good enough. Not good enough to just tolerate. We have to advance it and fund it. No, no, no. You're free to live the way you want, but don't ask me to pay for it. Don't ask me to say it's okay. I'm not going to attack you, but I'm not going to say it's okay because I think it's weird. The whole Democratic Party is weird. You want weird? Well, at the Olympics, I thought the opening ceremony was weird. I thought the closing ceremony was weird, even though I didn't watch it for more than 5 minutes. It was too weird. And I understand a lot of people are pissed off and upset about the closing ceremony, and they're still apologizing for the opening ceremony where they made fun of the Last Supper. Oh, you want to know what else is weird? 2 men won gold medals at the Olympics in the women's boxing competition. That's right. Just like we told you, the men won the gold medals. The women got excluded from their own sport. Knocked out, as it were, of the ring. I think that's weird, that men were allowed to compete against women and actually win the gold medal. And people applauded. That was weird, too. Everything about the Democratic Party is weird. Open borders is weird. High energy prices intentionally closing the pipeline was weird. Shutting down the funded contracts to build the border wall was weird. Letting the cartels operate with impunity is weird. Everything about the Democrats' economic policy is weird. Telling people they have to buy an EV was weird. Telling people they were going to convert the whole country to an electrical grid without building a single nuclear power plant to put the electricity in the grid to support the conversion and transformation. That was weird. You can't just say we're going to do it and then not put the grid in place to make it happen and yet try to do it. You know what else was weird? What was it, spending $6 billion for 7 EV recharging stations? And they spent how many billions on not connecting a single person to the internet? How do you spend over $1 billion and not connect a single person to the internet? Oh, they got hung up with DEI hiring requirements. Well, you know what? I think that's weird too. Everything about this administration is be weird. From the fact that he won't talk to reporters, won't take questions, has dementia, has Parkinson's, stumbled around, fell over, and no reporter asked him about it. That was weird. And nobody demanded that he take a medical test. They made Trump take one. He took it and passed. What happened to Joe? That was weird, too. And I think the trial in New York, where they didn't tell him what he was accused of until the closing statement of the prosecution after the defense was barred from speaking because it had already given its closing statement. That was weird. And a state court trying a federal charge without any trial of the charge, that was weird as well. The whole administration has been weird. It's not Trump and Vance that are weird. It's the Democrats. This is just more projection. Oh, let us do more. Let us do more. We'll help the middle class. Every time the Democrat politicians do more, they get rich and we get poor. No, thank you. No, thank you. And this is a far left ticket. She says she's not for eliminating gas and oil. She is. She's total green energy. She'll shut everything down. She says one thing and does another. She's a pandering, pathological liar. A pandering, pathological liar. And it kind of looks like there are serious questions about the honesty and integrity of Walz, who appears to have substantially misrepresented the facts surrounding his military service. I'm not going to get into that because I don't know the details, but it sure sounds bad, and it's not the Republicans or the conservative media accusing him of it. It's people from his own National Guard unit that went on to Iraq in the battle zone after he left. So that puts credibility behind it. There's an issue of stolen valor there, is my understanding. Misrepresenting battlefield service when there was none. And that's terrible. That would exclude any Republican in a minute if that were true. But the media isn't even raising it as a question with Walz. It's just all happy giggles and smiles. It's dance and joy time. Policy? No, we don't have any policies. Explanations? No, we don't have any explanations. Plans? No, we don't have any plans. We're just going to continue what's been done, destroying the middle class of America. So let's go through what Joe and Kamala have done in the last 4 years. They left the border wall unfinished. They stopped all construction by eliminating funding for it. They blocked the gates so they couldn't get motors. They sold off all of the excess material so the next administration couldn't restart it with the same materials. They terminated the Remain in Mexico policy. They terminated the seek asylum only from an embassy in a foreign nation. He opened the southern border to all and invited foreigners to pour in, and they did. 10 to 12 million. He orchestrated an invasion of foreign persons that they're now diverting budget priorities to. Instead of veterans and Americans and the sick, it's the illegal aliens who were getting the budget money. How? This wasn't in the budget. Where the hell's the money coming from? They never tested the immigrants for COVID. They locked Americans up and fired them, made everyone wear masks, but at the border it was open season. No masks, come on in, no testing. And that's the only group of people the federal government is authorized to test and quarantine, those entering the country. Not citizens, that's up to the states to manage. The only group of people the federal government is authorized to manage with respect to disease are the foreigners entering the country. And they wouldn't do it. And in fact, not only did they not do it, they paid to transport illegal aliens all over the country, many with COVID. And then they wondered why these strange diseases, versions of COVID from all over the planet, kept showing up in different places in America. Yeah, gee, I wonder how that happened. You bust them and flew them all over the country. Where'd the budget come for that? They allowed thousands of criminals to pour in. They allowed the fentanyl to be smuggled in and sold. They allowed child smuggling operations. They actually helped the smugglers by playing mule for the last leg. The smugglers would deliver the kid to the border, and then ICE would take it and put him on a plane and fly him to the quote-unquote family in Chicago. Right, check. They caused the economic collapse. The Democrats did by closing the liberal states, the big liberal states, California, New York, Illinois, New Jersey, Connecticut, Massachusetts, Maryland, Colorado, Washington, Michigan, Minnesota, Pennsylvania. All these Democrat-run states shut down their economies so that Trump wouldn't be able to say he delivered the best economy in history for the election. They intentionally shut down the economy to take away from Trump the economy improvement argument. He closed the Keystone Pipeline, changing the future outlook of energy, driving the price of gasoline as high as what, $7 in California, and it's now stabilized at around $4. Well, it was $2 when Trump was in office. When you double the price of energy, you double the price of life and halve the quality of life. And then he's had his department slow walk all permits and other issues for opening up any leases. They canceled the leases. He shut down. He completely destroyed the American energy independence. And that's a big cause for the high prices that we've been suffering under, is their intentional energy policy. And instead of going to American companies to produce more energy, he drained the National Petroleum Reserve, so we don't have enough oil to maintain war status anymore. And then he went begging to Iran, Venezuela, and Russia to produce more oil, and OPEC, our actual enemies and our economic competitors. He didn't go to the American companies and say, let's turn oil back on, let's finish that pipeline. No, he went to the foreign enemies and said, no, please, produce more oil so the price goes down so you'll stop hurting us. And our enemies said, yeah, sure, Joe. Just hold on a sec, we'll get to that. Yeah, right. And they triggered the inflation with both the cost increases and the printing of all the dollars. And inflation isn't running at 3%. It's been running at more like 10%. And of course, he blew everything with COVID. He didn't allow the vaccinations to be voluntary. He tried to make them mandatory and actually fired the frontline workers and the health workers that had carried us through the COVID epidemic by working when there wasn't a vaccine available, many of whom who had caught COVID and recovered and had a natural immunity. But the government didn't recognize the natural immunity anymore. 100 years of science, and Biden threw it away to fire people, to be a little fascist Nazi. Take the vaccine or you might be conservative. Out you go. They fired servicemen and frontline health workers. Even though they had natural immunity, he didn't care. What's science when you're seizing control? He had more COVID deaths in 2021 than Trump did in 2020. What was he saying? Well, someone with 600,000 COVID deaths doesn't deserve to be in office. Well, Joe, you had over 1 million. Why are you still in office if that's the way you feel? And they closed the schools, which was unnecessary, masked the kids, which is unnecessary, and spent how many billions of dollars on plastic dividers? And they're all gone. They threw them away. $5 billion on plastic from China. For what? To get laughed at. To get laughed at. And they let the teachers' union seize control and shut the schools down. We'll teach from home. Remote learning. Yeah, right. Remote wasting money. And instead of developing antiviral COVID treatments, they badmouth the ones that worked. Sounds like we're coming up on another break. We'll get back to this list of everything they've done wrong in the Democrat Party that Kamala's saddled with in 5. We'll be back. This is Thomas Fried. Okay, this is Thomas Fried on the Liberty Works Radio Network, and let's just get right back into this because what I'm reading here or referencing is an 11-page list of all the things Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have done wrong and are responsible for as a result of their administration. And where were we? We're right up to CDC failed to admit and recognize the known science of acquired immunity. And they made worse the supply chain crisis by unnecessarily firing workers who had become immune through natural immunity, but who refused vaccinations. They got fired too. He ordered the DOJ to spy on patriotic parents who complained about critical race theory and gender dysmorphia curriculums in the school, and who complained at the school board meetings. They had the FBI spying on parents and Catholics over abortion protests. Of course, they didn't do anything when the Democrats protested the Supreme Court houses. Yeah, no, that's not a problem. But stand outside an abortion clinic with a sign and you get put in jail for 2 years if you're an elderly woman. The weakest president in modern history with foreign diplomacy. He disgraced America with a humiliating surrender in Afghanistan. They lost the lives of 13 service members through incompetence, both military and political. They left $90 billion in weapons, ammo, and equipment, which the Taliban had a parade with just the other day, rolling hundreds of U.S. armament vehicles through town in a parade of all the military equipment they've repaired since Biden gave it to him. And of course, what the Taliban taking charge in Afghanistan has caused is hunger, starvation, famine, and being tossed back to the Stone Ages for all the women who now have to cover themselves up, aren't allowed to drive, go out, or go to school. That had all been changing for the last 20 years. It's all rolled back. Joe sent them all back to year one under radical Islamic governance by walking away from Afghanistan. He is a complete coward. He's run away from everything. And of course, they spent $1.9 trillion on a relief bill that wasn't a relief bill at all. It was a boondoggle. 9% would be spent directly fighting the coronavirus, 1% on vaccines, 0.3% on K-12 schools. So they wasted all that money. All the rest of it was just a disguise for spending on green programs and other social programs, like registering illegal aliens to vote, which is what they're really all about, is social engineering. $2 billion in stimulus checks to federal prisoners. They're just passing out the money to everyone. They blocked an amendment to restrict the stimulus payments to only eligible persons, i.e. economically eligible, not well off. And all of that relief money they put out, it's still sitting there. It's not going to be spent for up to a decade. That's one of the things Trump has said, is he'll stop that and put that money back so that it reduces the debt rather than increases it without giving us any return on the spending. And it's not investment. That's another lie the Democrats tell. Governments don't invest, they spend. They like to call it an investment so that you won't bitch about the exorbitant, excessive, and corrupt spending. He failed to deter Russia's invasion of Ukraine. He had a chance to stop them at the border, but he didn't want to provoke Putin. So instead, he let Russia mass on the Ukrainian border. Any idiot knows that when the enemy masses on your border, you either oppose him there or he invades. If you don't set up the line to oppose him as he masses on your border, you're inviting him in. But Joe didn't want to provoke Putin, so he invited him in. Oh, that worked out well, didn't it? Now you have endless war in the Ukraine, which Joe gave us. They fired the police officers as well as the frontline officers. They fired the military workers. They stopped prosecuting crimes in the city: theft, assault, looting, smash and grab, shoplifting, subway assaults. They just stopped arresting them. So while crime went up and city life got destroyed, they say the crime statistics show it went down. Crime went down during Biden's administration. Yeah, because you stopped reporting it. people stopped calling it in because the police wouldn't come, and then they wouldn't arrest, and then they wouldn't prosecute. So why bother? So, of course, the crime statistics went down. But you know what went up? Gun ownership. That's what went up. Every time these people open their mouth, they lie to America. They're as corrupt and pathological as it gets. And of course, he ran the Biden family crime syndicate for 30 years, selling access to the U.S. government and his office, peddling influence by soliciting and taking bribes from multiple foreign nations, the Ukraine, Kazakhstan, Russia, China, all through Hunter's U.S. government for sale operation. And, of course, they hid his senility and dementia for 3.5 years. Kamala was part of that. She was part of covering up the fact that he wasn't competent to be in office and run the country. And, of course, they told everyone to buy an electric car. Ability wasn't there to recharge it. The price is outrageous. The subsidy is going to wealthy people to encourage them to buy the car. But there's no grid to support it. It's insanity. And a lot of people found that out this winter when the EVs stopped working in the Northeast in the cold. Or they couldn't find a charging station on the East Coast. And they coordinated, the Biden and Kamala Harris administration coordinated with big tech to pass out information to silence opposition and to quelch the spread of information from the other side. They lied about the Hunter Biden laptop story. They suppressed the criminal evidence found inside that computer for 4 years. They still haven't acted on that. They want the Iran nuclear treaty to be reinstated, which guarantees Iran gets a nuclear bomb at the end. And they were relying on Russia. While they're supporting Ukraine's war with Russia, they're relying on Russia to help them with negotiations with Iran. You are kidding me, right? You are kidding me. These people live in a parallel reality. Parallel reality. And they've so pissed off the Saudis that now the petrodollar is being threatened. The Saudis are trying to find a way to let the rest of the world buy oil in something other than dollars, which means the rest of the world's governments won't have to hoard and hold dollars, which means the supply of dollars in the marketplace might be substantially increased as foreigners dump dollars by selling, using the dollars to buy other assets here in the U.S., leaving a excess supply of dollars and assets that Americans no longer own that are priced too high for them to be able to afford. That's when you'll get inflation, when the foreign governments dump the dollars they've been holding as reserve to buy energy from the Saudis who wouldn't take purchase in anything but dollars. Thank God there's no other paper currency for the Saudis to use, or we'd be in real trouble. They can't switch to gold. That would immediately drive the price of gold to like, what, $500,000 an ounce? And the Saudis would have to deliver, what, 500 barrels of oil instead of 10 for 1 ounce of gold? We'd rather deliver 10. Let's not mess with that just yet. So, Biden's been a fraudulent, illegitimate president right from the beginning. He's sold out America his entire political career, and he's acted to show it. He's allowed the border to be open, supporting the foreign invasion. He's allowed China to import the fentanyl and take advantage of us. Of course, this administration took us right into a recession almost immediately from day one. There's been no economic recovery. They lied about the recession. When you had 2 down quarters, the White House came out and said, oh, no, that's not a recession. The recession is being redefined. No, you've been in a recession since you had 2 down quarters in the inverted yield curve. It's been like 2.5 years. Inflation's running at like 12 to 18%, not the 6.5% the administration claims, and now the 3%. It's running closer to 10, 12, 13%. They've destroyed energy independence. They've processed millions of fake asylum claims to let criminals and unknown people without proper vetting into America. The invasion has flooded and overwhelmed the border states and their health and human services for shelter, food, medical care, transportation, criminal defense. Vandalism is up, property damage is up, the legal system is overwhelmed. While Biden and ICE and the CBP play Uber and Air America for the cartel's human smuggling operations and their child smuggling operations, child sex slave operations. He's repeatedly tried to usurp the authority of the purse by giving away billions of dollars in student loan forgiveness. Even after the Supreme Court told him it's unconstitutional, Congress controls the purse, not the executive. You can't give away money. Only Congress can forgive national debt. But no, he's still doing it. He's violating the Supreme Court order. He's going to be dictator. Ignore the law, break the law, pass forgiveness out to buy votes of the young. Personally, I think that was a big reason why the midterm election turned out to not be a red wave. Millions of students came out and voted because of the school loan giveaway. And of course, it wasn't a presidential election, so you normally have a smaller turnout. But if you get all of those kids to come out who normally aren't excited about voting, but if you're going to give me $10,000, hell, I'll buy that for a pull the vote dollar. So he's buying votes, and that's, of course, why they're bringing in the foreigners. Americans are leaving the high state, high tax, high crime states, high regulation, California, Illinois, New York. In the census, they would lose both congressional seats and electoral college votes because the citizens are leaving and those numbers are going down, while places like Idaho, Texas, Florida are going up. But to offset the loss of citizens, they bring illegal aliens in, register them to vote, tell them they can only vote in state elections, and then don't bother them when they vote in federal elections too, which are held in exactly the same place the state elections are held. So they're bringing them in and registering them to vote. And of course, they want them counted in the census, because that way the state won't lose electoral college or congressional seats in Congress. They'll be replaced with foreigners, but that means you're giving representation to foreign persons who are poor and uneducated. And guess what they'll vote for? That's right, socialism! Steal from the rich and share the wealth. But whenever you steal the wealth and share it, you don't share the wealth, you destroy it. When you take $1 million and pass it out as $10 to 100,000 people, they spend it on cigarettes, alcohol, drugs, food. You no longer have wealth. You have an addicted population. You didn't share the wealth, you destroyed it. It was the only person who worked hard to accumulate the million that understood you don't spend it. You use it as a pool of money to leverage assets to undertake other ventures. You don't spend it, you use it to make more. But when the government shares the wealth, it all gets spent. There's no investment. It's just straight up theft. So, 16 million young socialist students voted Democrat, specifically because of the money giveaways, buying votes. So, crime is rampant in every Democrat-run city in the country. They're not prosecuting the criminals. The tons of fentanyl is killing 100,000 people a year. Does everybody remember that Biden let a Chinese spy balloon float all the way across the country before they reacted to it? Oh dear, here we are at the end, and I'm on page 6 of an 11-page list of problems with the Biden administration. Maybe we'll do more next week. This is Thomas Freed on the Liberty Works Radio Network. This is the Truth Attack Hour. Tell your friends and family to tune in, get informed, and we'll be back next week. Very good. Thank you. Good night. Democrat convention day.